Hello, I'm Onyx Asili, a company member with Novelties Theater, and today I'm chatting with Scarlett Folds, the raunchy red-lipped lady that we all know and love. And today we're going to talk about a piece that would have been a part of our Adventure of Sherlock Holmes show, which unfortunately we were not able to do, but Scarlett came in as one of our guest artists and was absolutely phenomenal. And we would love to make sure that you guys get to see the hard work that she put in on this piece, which is absolutely gorgeous. So let's talk a little bit about the piece and talk a little bit about some of the background of the work. So clearly, like I said, this was going to be a part of our Adventure of Sherlock Holmes stories. How familiar were you with Sherlock Holmes before this presentation?
I can't say I was as familiar with it as Fosse and Sailor. I swear they're like Sherlock Holmes fanatics. They know every fact about it. I've read a couple Sherlock Holmes stories in my life, but really started to delve into what the Sherlock Holmes series really was about. And I never realized how many stories there were, and how many stories, we could turn into real life. But yeah, I wasn't super familiar with it until I started doing this with Novelties. So,
well, we're super happy that you came to join us. But what was your first encounters with Sherlock Holmes? I know it's sort of a pop culture icon, so they pop up in weird places. But you said you never really read a lot of the stories. So what was sort of your first interaction with Sherlock?
We read a Sherlock story in high school in my English class. I think we read it around like Halloween time because we were doing a bunch of different spooky stories. And I guess Sherlock was spooky enough for us to read. And I can't remember exactly which one it was, but it was a very short story. It wasn't very long because we were reading a whole series, so they couldn't do that much. And then I'm obsessed with Benedict Cumberbatch. So he also plays Sherlock, and I just love looking at him. So I mostly watched the show just to admire him and his accent and physique and beautifulness that exists in him. So I would say that's how I'm familiar with it.
The Adventure of Charles Augustus Milverton was published in 1904 in Collier's magazine in the United States. It made its UK debut in The Strand the same year. The plot concerns the titular blackmailer Charles Augustus Milverton, whose power and influence over British society threatens the impending marriage of Lady Ava Blackwell, Holmes's current client. Holmes is notably disgusted by Milverton's methods, and Watson tends to describe him as having rodent-like qualities. Ultimately, it is not Holmes who bests Milverton. He meets his end at the hands of one of the women whose reputation he is trying to ruin while Holmes and Watson look on. When Holmes is called upon by Detective Lestrade to aid in catching Milverton's killer, Holmes declares, "My sympathies lie with the criminals rather than the victim. I will not handle this case." Milverton himself is based on a real-life blackmailer and art forger named Charles Augustus Howell, who used his power and influence to line his pockets selling fake pre-Raphaelite paintings, and who met a similarly mysterious end, perhaps at the hands of one of his own victims.
So obviously people won't get to see the entire show that this comes out of, but if you had to just give them a quick summary of the show and how your piece fits in it, what would you say?
Ooh, a quick summary of the show. I guess a quick summary would just be the case of a woman whose life was ruined by a man and how Sherlock tries to fix it. And I would say that my character and the piece that she plays is probably the epitome of wrath and like that sin and that idea of letting something get to you so significantly that you feel like the only way to like cope with it truly is to get your revenge.
This piece that you're presenting for us today was a part of a larger series of stories that Novelties was going to do. But like, you didn't actually choreograph this piece. You had another person choreographing for you. So how did you kind of make it your own? That's always a process, especially if you're not the choreographer. It can be difficult to kind of get it into your body the way that feels right. So how did you manage to do that with this piece?
Yeah, I think just as a dancer in general, I think the key is to always find out in what way can you relate to the character. And I think just as a woman, it's very easy to relate to a man or male or Masque character sort of trying to ruin your life just because they feel like it. And I think that's sort of where I drew the similarity between me and the Countess. Is she was just a woman living her life happily, and someone decided you could no longer do that. Like, I have to mess with it. I need to ruin it, and so on and so forth. So I think that was how I related it, truly. It was just sort of tapping into all of maybe my pent-up frustration with the patriarchy.
So that's a very interesting way to go about it, because we've often heard people critique how male-centered Sherlock Holmes, the original works, are. Mm-hmm. So do you feel like this piece is a way to kind of push back against some of that? Or do you feel like this goes into that history in a way that maybe alters it a bit?
I think by having the gender roles of the characters sort of be switched around, and I think also having so many queer people in our cast was sort of our way of pushing back at that line of, yes, it has been male-centered and it has always been in this way, and we're sort of pushing that line of, yeah, but why? We can do it just as well. You know, Tootsie, who was supposed to play my evil counterpart, is obviously a femme person and played that role phenomenally. So it's just sort of like, I think by just creating the work that we were creating with the people that we were creating it with, we were sort of I think really just having our own sort of voice with it, making it our own.
So one last thing before we actually show this lovely piece that you did, to prepare ourselves fully for this amazing bit of art that we're about to see. What food and drink should we pair with this performance?
Ooh, something really, for those that eat meat, I would suggest something red meat oriented, something really rich, like a beef bourguignon, a pot roast. So sorry. Something just really maybe done with a red wine sauce. And then I would suggest for a drink, my favorite drink, which is champagne with a splash of cranberry. I think just that drop of the red cranberry will sort of play into the idea of what this act really is about, which is, blood and murder and wrath. So I think that would be perfect.
Excellent. I look forward to seeing this performance, and I look forward to having that menu as well. So do you have like a favorite line or a favorite passage from the larger piece?
Oh, goodness. I think mine isn't necessarily a line. Mine's definitely a moment. Trixie, who is the choreographer for my piece, put in this moment of where she is starting to question herself and wonder, is this what I want to do? Do I want to kill him? Am I going to pull the trigger? And then she sort of just glances at him and he's looking at her really smugly. And then she's like, never mind, I'm doing this. And I think that is a moment that truly just sort of I connected with, just because I think we all question, our decisions as humans just in generally. And she's, has this really big decision in front of her of, am I going to actually commit murder? Which cannot be an easy decision. And I hope no one would have to make that decision. But it's sort of like, she actually is like trying to hone back to her humanity and then is like, wait, never mind. Like, he took my humanity away from me. I'm just going to go for it. And I would say that was a moment that I just loved. I loved that, the choreographer put that in there for sure.
So if you could sort of rewrite this story, and I'm not sure how many people will be familiar with this particular bit of Sherlock Holmes catalog, but if you were going to rewrite it, what might you include or take out of it to make it feel more significant to you?
Yeah. I would have really liked, since no one actually saw the entirety of it, at the end, Sherlock, basically a police officer comes to him and says, there's this person, he got killed. He was actually someone that we've been after for a while. He's not a very good person. Will you take on this case or handle it? And Sherlock sort of goes, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, I'm not going to do it. And sort of just like does a little hush hush moment. And I really would have liked to have more of an explanation from Sherlock. I'm so sorry. My cats are just destroying everything behind me. But I would have really loved for Sherlock to sort of explain why he decided to keep it to himself and why he decided not to help them figure out who the killer was, because in the show, he would have known. He would have actually seen the murder happen. And I really would have liked to know what happens to the Countess afterwards, what her life looks like and how she copes with that guilt and that scenario that she decided to go with. I would have really just liked to delve into what happens after a countess who's been scorned creates murder, and what does her life look like, and why does Sherlock decide not to turn her in? I think that would have been something that I would have loved to have added in the original story.
Oh yeah, that's some great things. So what do you have coming up in the future? Where can people find you and see more of your work?
Yeah, so I have a few things coming up. I am a member of the Devil's Advocates, and we have a show called Quarantitty every third Thursday of the month. So catch us. We will be posting that on our Instagram, which is at Devil's Advocates Burlesque. I'm also a part of Simone Pin, and we have an upcoming show at the end of November. And they are a all POC owned and operated burlesque dance company. So feel free to follow them on Instagram. And then also the Dirty Darlings, who I'm also a part of, are creating something this upcoming January. So yeah, just follow me at Scarlett Folds on Instagram, and I'll be giving you all those updates and posting all of the ticket links. So if you'd like to keep up with my shenanigans, then that's how you can do that.
Excellent. Thank you for coming out to be a guest artist for Novelties and taking part in our Sherlock adventures, even though they did not make it to the stage. You are such a pleasure to work with, and we hope that we'll get that opportunity again in the future.
Yes, I do too. I have to say thank you to Novelties for having me. I've been with them now for the past 7 months since our projects have sort of been put on hold for a while, and it's just been honestly the best. I love every member. It's been a great experience. And I have to say thank you to everyone who's listened to my cats create havoc behind me. Jinx and Boo, in case you were curious.
Yeah, we'll just have to get them on stage next time.
Thanks for watching Ekphrasis, a production of Novelties Theatre. If you enjoyed this episode, we invite you to make a tax-deductible donation through the link in the video description. And don't forget to like and subscribe below so you don't miss our next episode featuring the Vertical Sideshow's neo-vaudevillian adaptation of Edgar Allan Poe's Masque of the Red Death.